It is Jim Bowden, and I love having you on a day like today because, JB, I look forward to these articles as much as anything. Trade season can never come early enough, even if GMs and president of baseball ops guys don't know it yet. So let's get this started, okay? On The Athletic this morning, it comes out 5 MLB trades. Yes, a little music from AJ for me, too. 5 MLB trades I'd like to see in May, including deals for Ryan Helsley and Joe Ryan. So I would like to start with Ryan Helsley. Where would you like to see him go, and what does the deal look like?
Yeah, I'd like to see him go to the Philadelphia Phillies, Scotty. Look, Dave Dombrowski came on my Sirius XM radio show a week ago and said, look, his biggest need is a right-handed reliever to better balance the bullpen. The Jordan Romano experiment hasn't worked great. And look, Helsley's an impact closer. He's one of the best in baseball. Philadelphia has a chance to win their division. They have a chance to win the World Series if they get to the playoffs. And that's an area that is their biggest weakness right now is the bullpen. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to see them trade one of their top pitching prospects, Mick Abel, to the St. Louis Cardinals, straight up for Ryan Helsley. Now, when you look at the Phillies, look, their rotation is 7 deep. Their best pitching prospect is Andrew Painter. He's not getting traded. But Mick Abel has kind of turned the corner this year. His command and control is finally arriving. That's usually the last thing that does arrive for a power pitcher like Abel. And for St. Louis, it's building for the future. This is exactly the kind of trade they need to make. Now, if you're Dave Dombrowski, you might want to have a window to try to sign Helsley at the time of the deal. But this is the kind of concept, to me, works right now for the rebuilding Cardinals and for the Phillies who have a chance to win.
What, as a GM, I'm putting you in Dave Dombrowski's shoes right now. You don't want to bid against other teams, but you also don't want to bid against yourself. How do you make sure that the price that you're paying is not an overpay? Because you even said it in your article, this is why GMs don't want to make these moves at this time because it costs more. So how do you facilitate that yourself? Or do you go into it and you say, you know what, there's a price I'm paying and maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong?
Yeah, I think, Eric, what you do before you start any negotiation in terms of trades is you know how far you're willing to go, and you kind of have a pretty good idea when you're going to walk away. And so if I'm the Phillies, I'm going to go into this thing. I'm not trading Andrew Painter, right? I'm not trading Aiden Miller. I'm going to try not to deal Justin Crawford as well. And I'm going to see, first of all, if I can make a deal for Helsley by using my lower prospects, maybe the mid-level, maybe guys that are in the 8 to 12 range, see if that bites. But if they come back and they ask for the Millers or they ask for the Painters or they come in with like that, then I'm going to sit there and know how far I'll go at the end of the day. I might not go to Mick Abel right away, but I'll continue the discussion. And if I feel like when I entered the discussions that that's as far as I would go and I would not do more and that's it, then I would kind of figure out when the timing is right to put my best offer on the table. If it doesn't work, fine, we'll work on trading for the next closer, right? But that's basically how it works.
Jim, one of the interesting ones for me is the Orioles with Joe Ryan. You have them getting Joe Ryan from the Twins for Cade Povich, Kobe Mayo, and Michael Ferret. Now, does this fix the Orioles' offensive problem against left-handed pitching? It helps their pitching staff, obviously, but it doesn't help them against left-handed pitching. So I get why you would make this trade if you're the Twins, but they still think they're in it. So I don't know. This is one of those, it's like, will either team be willing to do this? Because it's almost, if you're the Twins, you're almost planning for next year.
Yeah, well, I think the Orioles are planning for next year, too, if you want my honest opinion here. I mean, look, Corbin Burns is in Arizona. Grayson Rodriguez is on the injured list with a shoulder. Kyle Bradish is on the injured list. Zach Eflin's on a rehab assignment. They're hoping to get him back. Trevor Rogers looks like he's never going to bounce back. He's on the IL. Tyler Wells is on the IL. Dean Kramer has an ERA close to 6.5. Cade Povich has an ERA over 5 after 6 starts. Kyle Gibson has a 14 ERA after 2 starts. Charlie Morton has a 9.7 ERA and is in the bullpen and probably should be released. And so you've got Sagano and Eflin, and that's it. You're not going anywhere. And you do have this great group of young position players, but you have to build a starting rotation in Baltimore. So if I had to sit there and I had an opportunity to go get a Joe Ryan or a Pablo Lopez from Minnesota, that's what I need to do. Because if I'm going to win next year, I need to build the top of the starting rotation. You didn't replace Burns. Rodriguez got hurt. To me, that's the biggest hole. Now, to your point, look, I have a philosophical difference with what the Orioles have been doing, right? I think they've kept their prospects too long. I don't think they traded the prospects they were supposed to help the major league team win. I thought in the offseason when they went out and got Tyler O'Neill and Gary Sanchez and Ramon Laureano and tried to get these guys to help them against left-handed pitching, what they did was they blocked their prospects. I don't want to block them. I want to give them a runway, a pathway, and develop them. The other thing I have to look at is why do all my big league young hitters, why are they all underperforming? Why is Adley Rutschman hitting .213? And why does Jackson Holiday finally get rid of the big leg kick and go to a toe tap? Because he's watching Ohtani on TV. Where am I hitting people fixing this? So look, I'm looking at the Orioles, and they've done a good job of drafting. They've done a good job of gathering talent, but they haven't done a real good job of GMing and building a team that should be a postseason team by now. They've got some work to do. So in this trade, you trade Kobe Mayo. Yes, he's got 25 home run power, but he chases breaking balls out of the strike zone. Cade Povich, I like him, but he's not Joe Ryan. He might be developed into a mid-rotation starter. And I think Ferret would be a key to Minnesota to kind of make it work for them. But again, if I'm Baltimore, I'm obsessed with improving the top of the rotation for this year and going forward.
Jim, there's a lot of heat on Brandon Hyde. We discussed it last year. Does firing a manager in the middle of the season, does it change anything? And what's the thought process from a GM standpoint of why would I make this change? Brandon Hyde's been through the low times. Now he's in the high times. He hasn't changed his message. He hasn't changed. So why would I want to make a change in the middle of the year?
Yeah, great question. And I'm going to give you my answer. My answer as a GM is I don't like firing a manager mid-season. But if I do, I always have to take the position is your team better do better after you make it, or it's on you. It's on you. If you make a change and you don't start winning and the team doesn't go in a better direction, then it's on the GM and it's not on the manager. There are some times where a different voice is needed. I had a very mediocre team that was about a 500 team, and it was underperforming under Ray Knight, who was the manager at the time. And Ray Knight had our clubhouse very intense. They were very uptight. Pitchers were looking at him. If they'd go 2-0, they'd look in the dugout to see what his reaction was going to be like. And I didn't have a contending team. But I sat there and said, look, if I make a managerial change here, this team's going to do better. We're going to be more competitive. We're going to end the year on a positive note. I brought in Jack McKeon. I fired Ray Knight. And our team played over 500 the rest of the way. And it made a difference. So, again, I don't like in-season changes. But if you do it, it's got to make a difference. Now, when I look at Baltimore, and look, I've been vociferous. I've given you my opinion. Yeah, I would make a managerial change. And it's nothing against Brandon Hyde. He's taken them to the playoffs the last 2 years. I respect him. But I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like the fact that my young players aren't developing and getting better and living up to my expectations. And sometimes it takes a different voice to be able to make an impact. So, maybe Brandon Hyde loses this job and he gets the next job and does better. Look at all the Hall of Fame managers that got fired, right? Joe Torre, Jim Leland, Tony La Russa. They all lost jobs and they're Hall of Fame managers. Bobby Cox, same thing. He got fired, Hall of Famer. It's sometimes you just need a different voice. I don't like the direction of Baltimore, and I think change needs to be to matter.
Jim, if you had pitchers that were looking into the dugout for a manager's reaction, I think you had some soft pitchers. But that's not to be discussed here or there. We're talking about GM stuff. To me, your most slam dunk trade is Nolan Arenado to the Tigers, because the Tigers made a huge run at Alex Bregman. But it doesn't matter. If you swing for the fences and hit one to the wall, it's still a miss. It's still an out. To me, if they don't do this to absolutely improve the third base position, it would be 2 swings and misses in one season at one position for the Tigers.
Yeah, Eric, I agree. And look, keep in mind, though, the Tigers offered Bregman the most years and the most dollars, and he went to Boston, and that's not their fault. In terms of Arenado, look, this is not easy because his contract is atrocious. And so to make a deal for Arenado, it's how much can we get the Cardinals to eat? We know the Rockies are already paying $5 million each year, but how much more will St. Louis pay? That's the key. I think making a trade for him is easy. St. Louis would like to move on from Arenado, let the young kid, Nolan Gorman, take over third base, see what he looks like on an everyday basis. They're a rebuilding team. And I think if you're Arenado, even though Detroit wasn't a place you wanted to go to, you have to look at the Tigers right now and understand this is a playoff team. This is a really good team, and he would make a difference on this team defensively for sure. And when you look at the ballpark numbers, it's actually a little bit different than you think. I mean, it does work for pull right-handed hitters down the line, and they've got those good left-hand hitters in Riley Green and Kerry Carpenter. I think it'd be a great fit for Nolan Arenado. So I think he would waive his no trade. I think this is a deal that just makes too much sense for both St. Louis and Detroit.
FT fan by now, if you're buying, selling, trading, collecting cards, Arena Club is the spot. We've been talking about them all season long, but I do want to focus on the slab pack experience, Kratz, since you've been ripping some slab packs digitally. And what happens?
I mean, as a kid, you wanted to rip open the packs. How can they do this digitally? Oh, baby. This is exciting, how the graphics come out and everything. And, oh, yeah, the card that you pull, you can actually get that, John, physically. So it's perfect. It's all in one place, and it's a super exciting experience.
Yeah, they send that to you from the vault if you want it. But if you look at it and you're like, it's not the card for me, I want to sell back, go for it. You can do any of that on Arena Club, and you can acquire the best value for your money with those slab packs, transparent checklists, and Arena Club's Slab Safe program. Right now, you can get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/FAL and use code FAL. arenaclub.com/FAL. Use code FAL. JB, I'm going to take us to the Rangers. That offense has been abysmal, and you have Luis Robert helping to provide a spark. I don't go crazy over his numbers because he is the most classic change of scenery guy of all time right now. I mean, he is an absolute abyss. Do you feel the same way, and do you think this could make a big difference from them as they just basically cut Leody Taveras?
Yeah, look, he needs to get out of Chicago. By the way, he has hit well. If you look at the last 2 weeks, he's really turned it on. And a couple years ago, we saw 38 homers and 20 steals, and we see him make catches all the time over the wall, bringing home runs back. I think he'd be energized if he got to go to a different environment, a more competitive spot. I would love to put his locker next to Marcus Semion's. I think that'd be a really good place. I know, he's one of these lightning rods trade guys where teams a little bit worried because he looks disinterested at times. We can't really argue with, the power and the speed, can't really argue with the leather, the inconsistency we can get upset with, and at times he looks lackadaisical, which bothers GMs, but the talent's there. And when we look at all the position players that are going to be traded between now and the deadline, Luis Robert's going to be one of the top guys being dealt. And there's a lot of places that he fits really well. He fits in Seattle, who've lost Victor Robles with an injury. I think he fits in Philadelphia because I think Schwarber and Harper, if you put him in between those two lockers, I think they'd get the most out of him. I think Cincinnati would be a really good fit. Kansas City would be a good fit. So there's a lot of spots where I think Luis Robert works. But for the Texas Rangers, Evan Carter was supposed to be the center fielder. He hasn't hit a breaking ball yet. He's had the autoimmune injury. He's had some problems with the back. And so that's been an issue. They just put Leody Taveras on outright waivers. They've got Josh Smith playing center, who's better in that utility role. So I just think there's a really good fit in center field for the Texas Rangers. And I think, their prospect, the cabinet's pretty big. And I think there's a pretty good fit there with some guys that I think Chris Getz would like left-handed pitcher Cole Drake and outfielder Dylan Drilling would be two guys that would fit well. So I think that would be a good fit for Texas.
But it's so much up and down. You don't know what you're going to get with Luis Robert. Like, as a GM, how are you convincing yourself that this is going to go well? Because, I went out and got the best player that I possibly could get. It's not my fault he didn't show up for these 3 weeks when he first came in. Or is that not something that you just look at what the ceiling of it and you hope to not give away too much to get that?
No, what I'm going to do, and I'll give you a couple examples that I did in my career in the mid-'90s. I acquired catcher Benito Santiago and shortstop Tony Fernandez and moved Fernandez to third base. But we had some concerns similar to Robert with both of those guys. And then I went to Barry Larkin, who was our team leader. Lenny Harris was another guy that was a leader. And I kind of talked to them and I said, look, if I bring these guys in, can it work? Because, a bad apple can ruin the bunch, right? But if you get one or two and you have the right player leadership, it can work if the players are buying in. So, in Texas, I'm going to Marcus Semien, I'm going to Corey Seager, and I'm saying, hey, what are your thoughts on Luis Robert? What do you think about bringing him in? Here are some of the concerns that we have. What do you guys think? Do you think it would help? I mean, we got a problem in center field right now. We don't have one. So, I don't know what we're getting. We might hit a home run with this trade. We might hit a single. We might just strike out. But it seems like the price I have to pay, 2 top 15 prospects that are more in the 10 to 15 range, maybe makes sense here if we can get the White Sox to do it. And if Simeon and Seager are buying in and they say go do it, then yeah, that probably puts me over the top to make it.
All right, JB, there's 2 more things I want to hit. One is I actually want to go back to the Baltimore conversation. A lot of fans in our chat, and we like to react live here, are pretty frustrated with the way that the Orioles have made moves recently. You're getting the classic, hey, they hoarded prospects. I think that's like the simplistic way to look at it. But if we dive deeper into what went on here, AJ, and you were just in Baltimore, if you want to chime in too, I mean, we smashed the Orioles this offseason and really last year around the trade deadline. I know they got Eflin. I like that part. But the rest of it, this was their window. And I know now there's been development problems on top of that. But AJ, what are you seeing? And are you like me where I'm going, hey, Mike Elias was really pretty solid at taking the tanking and building it back up, but then doesn't know how to finish the job?
Yeah, it goes back to my question for this, Jim. The manager, you mentioned you'd fire the manager, but how much say so does does Brandon Hyde have in making the lineup? Like, we went in there and they can't hit lefties. Jackson Holiday doesn't play. I know O'Neill and Westberg are out, but Jackson Holiday doesn't play right against lefties. This is a knock on Jorge Mateo, but he plays. Why not let Jackson Holiday play every day and see what he can do? What's gone wrong with Adley Rutschman? Where this is a development issue, but like Scott said, is this on Mike Elias for not knowing how to put the finishing product on it? Because we can all hoard prospects, but at some point prospects got to become suspects and players in order to help you get over the top. And I look at the 2 big examples for teams, right? The Cubs and the Astros. They went through full rebuilds. What'd they do when they needed to? Justin Verlander to the Astros. John Lackey, John Lester, right? Those guys, they went out and got the finishing pieces, and it seems like Baltimore is trying to skip to the end without getting the pieces and doing the work they need to do. Now, I could be way off. You're a GM. You know better, but why is this all, Brandon Hyde, how much say does he have?
Well, AJ, you nailed it. I mean, honestly, 100% you nailed it. And Mike Elias did a really good job when he was with Houston, drafting Carlos Correa and George Springer in that group, right? He went to Baltimore. He did the same thing, but he's never proven that he can do the GM job. So he brought in great amateur talent. But since then, what have we seen, right? I did like the Corbin Burns deal. Unfortunately, they weren't able to extend them. They tried. But, we haven't seen enough aggressiveness on trying to win. The other thing that you mentioned, AJ, that has irritated me the most, and look, when I have Mike Elias on my radio show, I tell him directly the same thing I'm saying here. I don't like their idea of platooning players. I don't like it. I want a pathway and a runway, and I want players to develop. When I was a young executive, we would have guys in development that would sit left-handed hitters against left-handed pitching. And everybody around me kept saying, well, how are you ever going to develop a player to hit left-handed pitching if they never face him? So it's the same thing at the major league level. You get to the big leagues and you're facing pitching you've never seen before, and you see it for 9 innings. But how are you going to get better? You're only going to get better seeing these pitches, seeing the velocity, seeing the breaking ball, seeing the lefties, the righties, the different arm angles, the vertical break, the horizontal break. The more you see it, the better you get. So if you're Baltimore, what would be wrong with having Kauser, Mullins, and Kerstadt be in the outfield if you believe in them? Putting Mayo at first base, Holiday at second base, Gunnar Henderson at short, Westberg at third, Rutschman behind the plate, and say, you're playing every day. We're not going to go get these veteran older players to platoon, and we're going to let you develop, and we're going to find out how good you are. The other thing you have to do when you're in the GM seat is understand your prospects aren't as good as your own team rates them. And you got to figure out who the stars are and who the guys who have been overhyped and trade them before they get exposed to go get the pieces that you were just talking about, AJ, like John Lester, Bill Lackey, etc.
All right, last one. Well, if you're the GM, current GM in a big league team, and you find out that Major League Baseball hid the fact that they shrunk the zone a little bit, do you have any recourse? Do you have anything other than, all right, well, whatever. I guess it's just chalk it up to nothing we can do about it.
No, I mean, you pick up the phone, you call Commissioner Rob Manfred, and you say, what's going on? Like, how do we make this change? My manager knows nothing about it. Our players know nothing about it. And then the response we get back is, well, yes, we communicated. Wait a minute. This happens way too often. You might be communicating with some memo and some email that nobody sees, but if you're going to make a change at this level, we need transparency. We need to over-communicate. Everything we do like this, make sure Tony Clark and the Players Union knows it, and ask the Players Union to inform the players. You inform the players, then ask Tony Clark if he'll inform the players. Then you have to make sure the GMs and the managers are well aware of it, not based on some email or some passing comment. Look, when you're running an organization worth billions and billions of dollars, communication can't fall through the gap. It just can't happen.
Thank you. Yeah, we were going nuts on Friday. And then to say, oh, it happened. No, it didn't happen, because it's not even just players. It is team employees, as in managers,
Sure.
some of the guys that have been around for a while, right? Dave Roberts, Mike Schilt, do we think they're making that up, JB?
Nope.
Do we think that they would sit in a meeting and they would hear that and they would just be like, yeah, that's cool. Let me just take another sip of my drink.
They never heard it.
They
Inexcusable.
never heard it. Yeah.
Nope.
I can't believe that they haven't apologized or said something just as a blanket statement, which I think we all would have been okay with. Hey, our bad. We messed up on the comms. We're human.
Right.
There was a mistake. Let's let it go. The fact that it's so stubborn that it's like, no, we said something. I'm like, come on. So anyway, I'm with you there. JB, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks,
Great to have
guys.
you on.
Jim, what's your
and everyone
sweatshirt
check
today?
out. Oh, what
What's
do
your
you got? Yeah.
sweatshirt today?
Just your basic aloe.
Oh,
Nice.
you're downgrading. Nice. You should try a rowback.
Okay.
True.
Just saying.
Next week.
We'll send
Next
some. We'll send some. How about that? We'll send
All
you
right,
some,
cool.
JB.
Let's
We
go.
got you. Appreciate you.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.